not less than that. This meeting is being live streamed. I don't remember that I get that one. That just jumped up at me on.
Yeah, it's Caster going out on Facebook.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if we don't get Robert on, I've got a number of things we'll chat about, and I know that Alicia, who's on here, will always have some fun things for us to talk about. I'm going to be self-conscious for a second and lament wearing these glasses, which I'm getting tired of, but I'm loving the outcome that I'm getting, which is I've talked about, and that is that I'm in a recovering mode from eye lens replacement because of cataracts. And I have to wear UV protective lenses until they finish what is a modification process, a tweaking process to my eyes using ultraviolet light for very short bursts of time and modifying my vision to where it gets to be where I want it to be. So that's the goal. Arib, I hope you worked with Robert some on how to get in here and all that, because obviously we are.
He did. He said yes to that. Last week, I sent a reminder today. I don't know where he is.
And it could be because I sent him a couple of emails and he hasn't responded. It could be
No, he was responding last week.
oh, he did.
He
Okay.
was asking me like what I will be sharing. I told him exactly like it's like an informal impromptu session. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. Anyhow, we can wait for a few minutes and then we can talk about, or I have a replay.
I'm going to continue to just sort of talk to the audience, and
Yeah.
hopefully he'll come on. As we mentioned, for at least the last 2 weeks, we're currently investigating a new property. Come on, camera, come on down to the height that I want. In this part of the world, in Idaho, where we will hopefully have it be our newest ecological redevelopment property, even though it's not really a redevelopment, although it is a little partially. It has a old ghost town on it, of which the only residual from the ghost town is, and those of you that are not from the US, you've probably never heard that term, ghost town. A ghost town is a location where there was previously a city, a town, and it's been abandoned, and the buildings or some remnants of the community are still there. In this case, there aren't any buildings left. There is a cemetery. The schoolhouse has been moved to another location about 5 miles away. And there is one partial brick foundation location where they say it's where there was a hotel. So the little town that was there historically is called Rockville, and Rockville was never very large. It was never more than a few, probably dwellings, houses. The the hotel, maybe a post office. I'm not even sure if there was that. And I think there was almost always some kind of a restaurant slash bar, whatever. It reached its peak times in the 1880s during the gold rush in Idaho for a place called Silver City, which is about a 20 mile, excuse me, distance from where this location is. And supposedly this little place came up because they were feeding the miners in Silver City, and they needed to have a stop along the way, which is what this was, as they were bringing food and other kinds of needs up to the Silver City location, which is at higher elevation. Silver City's in a mountainous location. This is high desert, arid desert area. And I showed some pictures of it the last couple of webinars, so we're not going to go into a lot more detail today. Hopefully Robert comes on soon. Maybe we'll begin to do a little introduction of him. Mark, you said you'd found some videos that he might have done, some YouTubes. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
I always get more stupid phone calls during this webinar than I get any other time during the day. Doesn't matter what day of the week it is, what time it is. That's when I'm going to get more. So again, it's not. My watch is telling me that the call is coming in. My phone is here. I'm not using my phone, so it's just annoying that it comes in. So, Mark, if you can pull up maybe a YouTube video, at least we'll show it. And if he still comes here in a few minutes, we'll go with it. Otherwise, we'll just keep chatting a little bit.
Right. I have a video from YouTube, so I can play this. This is a very short video, so 45 seconds, where he says hello to everyone. Let's see. And
hello, my name is Ronald Kaboye. I am from Uganda. I support High Co Initiative. I support research on national eco security system for our children, the very young generation, the youth, and all people in place. I support jointly building an eco security system with all people globally. In this, we are able to fight against climate crisis, the global pandemic that is hitting everywhere. In addition to that, we are able to live together. Thank you.
That was very nice. So I get an idea. He is from Uganda and is passionate about a lot in the news over the last week. The unfortunate death of Charlie Kirk here in the U.S. and then the memorial that was held for him yesterday, and how he had really just lived a life of trying to make sure that we did things peacefully, and that we ended up in a peaceful world. And he was just passionate about that. Charlie Kirk was, and it sounds like Robert is also. Did you have any others, Mark, or was just that one? So why don't you show his LinkedIn profile real quick? And
I
if
think, I have one more video that we can share,
okay,
and
let's
then
see the video
we
too.
can. All right. So here's one more video.
From Uganda, a conservation scientist and climate change Ronald Kaboye from Uganda, a conservation scientist and climate change expert. I work with the youth-led organization Human Nature Projects Uganda, and we have various impacts that we have really put in place, challenging the climate change issues, including contributing to food security, restoring the ecosystem, the forestry system, through agroforestry practices and smart practices, livelihood change within inclusive community participation, bringing on board the youth, the community, the indigenous community, the refugees, and some other people, categories that may not be really mentioned in this talk. But our organization engages using a collaborative mechanism as an approach, which is new, by bringing closer all youth leaders, women and men, the local community, the government, and several other local youth-led groups in promoting together climate change issues solutions, especially using nature-based solutions on the ground. And our unique approach is the collaborative mechanism, bringing on board together the people, the youth, the young people in schools, in institutions, in communities through collaborative mechanism. And I believe this is a unique kind of mechanism for all of people. Thank you very much.
Well, that was nice. Gives us an idea about Robert. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess we aren't gonna get him with us here today. We'll reschedule another time. We might not go a full hour here because we will have a talk with Wayne session on Thursday, but why don't you throw out any questions or comments that you have? We have a few new people in the audience even, which is pretty cool. If you are new, tell us where you're from and let us know a little bit just what brought you here, and so we can throw that out there. Reeb, you have any luck trying to get a hold of him?
No, sir. I have sent him 3 emails. Not even once he replied back.
And he would be middle of the night, wouldn't he?
It would be 11 p.m. for him, so he already knew that.
Just a little bit about hydrating. That's what I'm doing right now. This is Gatorade.
Gatorade, yeah.
I'm not promoting this as a product, but it is a
Electrolytes.
electrolyte rich product.
Yes,
And,
all the athletes know about it.
yeah, a lot of people, I believe, don't drink enough fluids, water, or in my case, I really like electrolyte rich. Plus, I like the taste of Gatorade versus water. We're leaving the summer season here in North America, and going to be in South America, Southern Hemisphere, going into the summer season. We're in the spring and then into the summer. It's important to stay hydrated.
Yeah, but Gatorade is super expensive in my country. But we have we have like Chinese powders that we can mix for like Kool-Aid kind of thing.
Really?
Yeah, that is the alternate to Gatorade.
One
And
of our audience asked me a question about my dog, and I think that's about my dog that had
one eye.
surgery and lost his eye recently. Thank you for asking, Steve. He's doing great. As a matter of fact, way better than we could have hoped. Reeb, you were raising your hand. Does that mean you heard anything from Robert?
No, sorry. I think I was checking on something else.
Yeah. So just a little bit of an update of what we're talking about here. I have a retriever who had a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, about some ooze, a little bit of white mucus coming out of his right eye, and took him to the vet, and the vet said, "I don't really know what's going on. That's not natural. It's not. You shouldn't have that." So I would recommend taking him to a very, an ophthalmology specialist. Well, Colorado State University is very near where he was, and that's an amazing veterinary hospital, really. And so took him there, and they determined that he had a mass growing in his eye, some kind of a tumor, and it was huge. Probably was taking over the most of the eye, and his retina was detached. He was blind in that eye. They now estimate he could have been blind in that eye for a couple of years. Anyway, determined he should have surgery, have the eye removed. So we had that done, and they did. They were confident that they removed the mass. It had not spread. They didn't believe. They did a test to determine pathology about whether the growth was cancerous. Turns out it wasn't. It was benign. So it's not a good thing that he lost his vision in that eye, but it's not horrid because he didn't end up having cancer from it. Anyway, he's doing really well. You hardly can tell that he doesn't have the eye. Most dogs that have hairy faces, which he does, they kind of shield their eyes and squint a little. It's hard to do it with these glasses on, but to show you kind of when I'm squinting. But in his case, you can't really hardly tell that there isn't an eyeball there. He's training again, and he's doing all the things that he should be doing. The trainer has not seen anything that would indicate that he's even having problems. It's very likely that he was in quite some pain prior to having this eyeball removed and the mass removed. So it's very likely he's feeling a lot better now. Dogs aren't able to talk, so they can't tell you. But anyway, thank you for asking, and he's doing just great. Appreciate it. We had one of our members comment about the memorial service yesterday for Charlie Kirk, which I would highly recommend to anybody. Did that get broadcast worldwide? Did you guys hear about it, Mark? Or?
No, I
Not
didn't.
us. No.
No, but I guess we could have seen it if we tune into international channels like CNN. Maybe they broadcasted it.
CBC or CNN, yeah.
Yeah.
It lasted for 6 hours
Wow.
and had speakers from, all the way from President Trump to lots of the cabinet members, and then his wife was just unbelievably touching. And the most important thing that all the speakers were giving message wise is similar to what he believed, which is that we should all be willing to have dialogue, talk about difficult issues, and realize that we're not always going to agree about them, but we should listen, and we should be willing to accept that other people's views might be different than ours, and we don't need to change our views. We don't need to go and agree with them on theirs, but we should we should disagree in quote, I'll just use the word love or peace, which is what he taught. And his widow, his wife, Erica, made a statement that was pretty emotional. She said, I know what Charlie would say if he was here, which is that if someone harms us, we should forgive them. And she then quoted something biblical, which was that what Jesus said as he was dying, was on the cross, being crucified. And his statement was really simple. Father, again, talking to God, forgive them, and I forgive them because they know not what they do. Meaning they don't really, they don't realize that what they're doing is not right. It's inappropriate. And so again, she was saying that she knows that Charlie would have forgiven the person that shot him, and she forgives that person. And she says that he knows not what he did. So anyway, it was really pretty touching. Lots of good music and a lot of people. There were 100,000 people there live, or they were two different arenas that they used. One of them, the football stadium that one of the U.S. football teams, the Arizona Cardinals, play in, and then a secondary arena right next door to it where they do other sports, basketball and other things. And that one was full also. And then there were, I think, 600,000 people online. I don't know how they had the count, but they had a count that they were showing live of how many people were watching. And there's a link here to the YouTube channel, so you can watch it there, I'm pretty sure. And again, it's 6 hours long, so don't worry if you can't watch it all. Well, Alicia put something in about hydration 101. And, that's a good thought. Robert was going to talk to us about Uganda and about his experience there and helping people deal with hunger, famine, and using more regenerative farming techniques rather than literally just tearing down rainforests and leaving places that are not nearly as good from an ecological perspective as they were before the farming was occurring. Great topic. We've heard from many others about that, and obviously it's what we teach and we believe in. So that's what our topic would have been today. I didn't prepare anything other than just to talk with him. So unfortunately, I don't have, just coming off the top of my head, some topics. I've been using, by the way, just to, a little bit more AI recently. I think Chat GPT 6 is now out there. I want to see if it's on one of the versions that I use. Have you noticed it, Mark? It isn't on AI PRM, which is what Mark and I use all the time. It's still 5.0 there.
Yeah, it's still 5.0.
A lot of people were a little critical of 5.0 when it came out, which wasn't very long ago, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the most,
Right.
because it didn't have a lot of upgrade over 4.0, over 4. So there were concerns that maybe it just wasn't moving in the right direction, because usually when they come up with the new version, it's dramatically more powerful. Mark's been creating a brand new website for us for using the internet to do auctions. We can use it for all kinds of purposes, and we'll probably make use of it with some things broadly in the EAT community. To get online auction software is a $400 or $500 a month fee typically. And so being able to create it ourselves is going to create a lot less long term and ongoing costs for us. So it's real cool what Mark's doing with it. I'm going to ask a favor of our audience. Mark, put up the site. Can we give a URL and let people go into it and just so they can help us fake some auctions
Yeah,
for
I can give them, yeah, I will give them the URL of homepage, and they gotta log in and go to the auction site.
right?
So
And you have to register to be able to
right.
go in and make a bid. These are not going to be real bids, so don't worry about it. They're
Yeah, we're
all,
not
all
not gonna ask you to pay anything.
yeah, we're just testing. And by the way, that interestingly, what this auction site will be different than most auction sites, when you're bidding, you have already in advance committed yourself to pay for the item that you might buy, and you will have already given a credit card number. In this case, the winner of the auction is going to then talk to the owner of the item that they purchased, which is in this case a dog, and they will agree that the price they're going to pay is what they bid, and it'll actually be paid online. And then we'll send the money to the seller, but the seller and the buyer will be talking about how the buyer is going to get the dog and in some cases to organize transportation, do other things. But there it is. There's the URL for it that Mark just put up in the chat. If you wouldn't mind, just go in there and sign up as if you're a buyer, and it's going to ask you a few things. Don't worry about putting any kind of answers in that are meaningful. Just we'd like to test it with a bunch of other people. Alicia's telling us about something that she did describe for us last week also that I'm going to be attending, which is the Acres USA conference in December, early part of December, which is in Madison, Wisconsin, which is kind of a cold place to be in the middle of the winter. But they probably were able to get the location, the conference center cheaply because it's not the most optimal time of the year to be going to a conference in Wisconsin. But she put the link up for how you would register for that also.
Yeah, and the VA365 is going to be another project of ours. So
Yeah.
we'll talk about that too in the future.
Yeah. So VA365 is we through this tool that we've used ever since we started EAT, which is Kajabi, and we used it way before we started EAT. Even we were one of the founders using it back. By the way, Mark, did you check out their big? They made some of their biggest positive changes here in just the last week with Kajabi and adding other features to it. And I haven't had a chance to look at all of them, but they really upgraded it dramatically. That Gabe Brown video that she just put a link up to would probably be a good one for us to play here, just to take a little bit of time. And then we'll probably call it for the day. Because like I said, I didn't really prep for anything, and I still will be on Thursday. This is just, we're trying to kill a little bit of time because our speaker didn't make it for whatever reason. But why don't you play that YouTube video that Gabe Brown that she's put the link in, Mark?
Yeah, okay.
Gabe Brown is a regenerative farmer from North Dakota, one of the few people we have not yet interviewed. And he's done amazing things up there in North Dakota with what so it looks like it's of him speaking somewhere.
Right, I'll play that.
So what is all this talk about regenerative agriculture? You know, I would have never guessed back years ago, John Cherry reached out to me and asked me if I would consider coming and speaking at Groundswell. And unfortunately, he's asked me several times. I've had to say no simply because my schedule tends to fill up. But I have watched this grow and grow over here over the past 8+ years. And after last year's advance, I reached out to him and I said, John, whether you want me or not, I'm coming next year, God willing. So it's a real pleasure for me to be here. So I understand. I saw the hands that were raised, and many of you said that you've read my book. Thank you for that. It was the first book I wrote. To be honest with you, I'm not a very smart businessman. I signed a deal where I make a whopping 76 cents a copy, so it takes a lot of copies. But you heard my story, but most of you who haven't read it wouldn't know that I'm from North Dakota, and when many people think of North Dakota, this is what they think of, that I'm out on the tundra. And no, that's not a herd of muskox. That's actually our cow-calf pairs out grazing at 40 degrees Celsius below zero, okay? And they do just fine. There's a close-up of what they were grazing. And people find that hard to believe that part of regenerative agriculture is how do we get back to nature. And yet here they are trying to impose their will on nature, keeping cattle and other livestock confined. I'm going to put this challenge out there. If you think your animals should be confined, in the winter, go open a gate. See where they want to go. I guarantee you that they'll want to go out and find what they really prefer to do, and that is to graze. So, I learned how to farm from my father-in-law, who practiced very conventionally. Our farm back in North Dakota is about 6,000 acres. Of that, there's about 2,000 acres of arable land, another 4,000 acres of perennials. My father-in-law farmed what I consider very conventional. Half summer fallow, half crop, synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, fungicides, monoculture production. That's how I learned to farm, because I was born and raised in the city. I married into this, took a real interest in agriculture, but I couldn't quite understand some of the things he was doing. One of the things he loved to do was to till. This is my father-in-law and his beloved disc. He practiced what I call recreational tillage. Some days he just went out, tilled for the sake of tilling. True story. So when he retired, he had an auction sale, sold all his equipment except that tractor, and he went and bought a brand new disc, and then he went and disced for the neighbors for free. Now, I wonder with today's fuel prices if he'd still continue to do that. I kind of don't think so. Now, I got to fast forward a little bit. When my father-in-law, he saw me going down the regenerative path, saw me go no-till, was not a believer. Until the final year he was alive, I was combining 200 bushel maize off dryland farming on 13 inches of moisture. Then I knew I finally had him. He went and asked my wife to take a picture of him and my son standing in that cornfield as it was being combined. I knew I finally had him. A month later, unfortunately, he passed away. And ironically, what did Gabe get in his will? Not the tractor, okay? He gave me that disc, you know? That was his way of saying, Gabe, you're doing good, but maybe you just might want to till a little bit. The disc lasted 5 days and it was sold. 1994, I sold all my tillage equipment, went 100% zero-till. And I originally did that to save time and moisture, okay? So I was committed. I had a friend who had told me, Gabe, if you're going to go no-till, sell your tillage equipment. Then you can't go back. And I did that. 1994 was a good year. We had a bumper crop. I thought, man, I got this down. Life is easy. 1995 came along, and the day before I was going to start combining 1,200 acres of spring wheat, we lost 100% of our crop to hail. Now, I didn't have any crop insurance. My father-in-law had farmed there 35 years, only had hail twice to a very small extent. Well, that was pretty difficult to go through, losing your entire cash crop, but I tell you, we managed. Next spring comes, the banker, okay, he'll borrow me more money. 1996, we lost 100% of our crop to hail again. So things are getting pretty tough. My wife and I took off-farm jobs. We had payments to make. I was fortunate in that I had a contract for deed on the land with my in-laws. I was pretty sure they weren't going to foreclose on me. But the bank wasn't willing to loan me money anymore. 1997 came along, and I was starting to diversify the crop rotation because, hey, I can't put all my eggs in one basket. I started growing peas, some fall biennials, started to diversify a little bit. 1997 came along, and it was an extreme drought. Nobody harvested an acre in our area. Now, we're in an area, get about 17 to 18 total inches of precipitation. However, of that, about a third of it is from the snow we get. We'll tend to get about 75, 80 inches of snow a year. And if we don't get snow, it's not good for the next year's crop. So after 1997, things were looking really bleak. I was questioning my choice of professions. My wife was questioning her choice of husbands. But in saying that, last month we celebrated our 44th anniversary, so I think it worked out okay. Anyway, yeah, thank you. 1998 rolls around, and that is an actual photo that we took from our ranch, and you can about guess what that meant. So, yeah, we lost 80% of our crop to hail that year. So 4 years, no crop income. I had livestock. I began to enjoy livestock even more because they tended to live through the hailstorm. But I tell you what, 4 years, things were looking a little dire. Piggy bank was hurting. We were $1.5 million US in debt, which was a lot of money back in 1998. It still is today. So how do I get out of debt? Bank wasn't going to borrow me money, as I said. My neighbors were all just waiting. They just wanted to buy the land. But I tell you what, I was beginning to see some changes occurring. We had never had an earthworm in our field. I could never go fishing. My father-in-law dished those earthworms to death. There was no earthworms in the fields. We were starting to see some. I was seeing pollinators and other beneficial insects show up. Birds were becoming more and more numerous. We were starting to see the neotropicals migrate in. Wildlife was becoming much more abundant. Water was starting to infiltrate into our soils. I remember learning from my father-in-law. Spring of the year, we'd be out there disking the fields, and he'd say, Gabe, we're just trying to dry the fields out so we can get in and seed. But then by July, we were on our knees praying for rain. It didn't make sense to me. Now, all of a sudden, I started to see water infiltrate into the soil. And my soils were beginning to look like chocolate cake. They were actually changing color. And this occurred from those 4 years. I really then began to realize that I had degraded my ecosystem. And nature, the natural succession process was working, and we were starting to get health back into the system. This is a photo, my soil's there. You can guess which ones are mine and which ones are my neighbors. Now, I'm not going to say which neighbor just in case they got somebody in the room here, but there was a real difference. And this is one of the things I want to impress on you about regenerative agriculture. People think, oh, it takes decades to make a difference. No, it doesn't. The change can occur very rapidly if we open our eyes and observe. It was during that time that I heard a rancher from Alberta, Canada, make this statement when I was at a conference. And this statement, along with those 4 disaster years really shaped my life. He said this: if you want to make small changes, change the way you do things, a piece of equipment, an input, etc. But if you want to make major changes, change the way you see things. And that's the challenge I want to put forward for you today. Change the way you see things. Now, I've been blessed in that I get to travel all over the world. I'm on hundreds of farms every year. And I tell you what, as long as there's a little bit of soil, we can move that piece of land down the regenerative path. This is not rocket science. It's certainly not difficult. A city kid from North Dakota can kind of figure things out. Every one of you can also. I really realized that my management had been degrading the soil. I was not being a good steward of the land. It was then that I realized that I needed to become a student again. Realize I have several college degrees, but you know what? Never once in any of those soil classes and in any of those agronomy classes did they teach me how a soil aggregate was formed, how biology drives the natural nutrient cycle. I needed to unlearn and relearn. You see, that's the most difficult thing we have to do to change the production system. Farmers cannot implement what they do not understand. How many people really understand how a soil aggregate is formed? Yet your profitability depends on that. The conventional agriculture model is the road to degradation. My father-in-law disking those soils year after year, multiple times. Do you realize that the thickness of a sheet of paper is the equivalent of 1 ton of topsoil per acre? Look at this photo. See that soil blowing? How many tons of topsoil are being lost just from that one tillage pass? We have to realize, no matter where we go all over the world, 30 to 75% of the organic carbon that was once in our soils is now in the atmosphere. That's our children's future. That's our health. That's the nutrient density of the food we produce. That's no longer there. Take a look at this photo, and I know many of you have seen this. We've been using it for years. A farmer had a forested area. They cleared that forested area. It was 4.3% soil organic matter. They farmed it with tillage, herbicides, conventional practices, soybeans for 17 years, 62.8% loss in soil organic matter. That's the same soil. The only difference is the management. I know many people say, but Gabe, I'm a no-tiller. I'm already regenerative. I'll call BS on that. This photo here I dug out from a neighbor's field, different neighbor than the last one. I talk about my neighbors routinely and try and rotate through them. This is 12 years of no-till. Take a look at that soil. How much water is going to infiltrate in there? Right? How much biology is in there? How much diversity is in there? How much carbon's being stored in there? You see, no-till isn't enough either. That's but a small piece of the puzzle. The conventional road to degradation has many, many consequences for others. We see a significant degradation in water quality. Flooding. You know, I don't know here how it is here in the UK, but in the States, every spring along the major waterways, there's major flooding issues. That causes massive economic loss to those communities, to individuals. What's the current production model doing to our small towns? We're seeing a lot of the profitability that is in agriculture go to very, very large producers and being exported to large agribusiness. And no, I'm not anti-large agribusiness, but I believe we need to keep the wealth in the farmers' pockets and in our rural communities. And finally, what's it doing to human health? And I'm going to talk a lot more about that one. There is a better way, though, and that way is regeneration. That's what I'd like to talk to you about. Regeneration isn't a practice, it's a mindset. And Your Highness talked about that, how we need to change our minds, change the way you see things. Regeneration means stewarding life, not extracting from it. Unfortunately, for the past 75 plus years, that's what we've been doing. We've been extracting the health of our soils, we've been extracting the wealth out of our rural communities, and we've been extracting our own health. It's how we grow food, treat animals, educate our children, run companies, and define success. When we regenerate soils, we regenerate people, communities, and natural ecosystems. That's the kind of thinking that we need to scale. That's why it's so exciting for me to be here at Groundswell and see so many people want to take on this challenge. And when we go home and look in the mirror, we have to realize that challenge starts with each and every one of us. That's the kind of thinking that we need to scale, not more bureaucratic compliance checklists and subsidies. Sorry, I just had to get that one in there. We need to go beyond sustainability. I do not like the word sustainable. Why do we want to sustain a degraded resource? That makes no sense. And let me tell you what, every single farm I've been on all over the world, including my own, is degraded. We can't stand for that. We need to move beyond that. We need to learn how to observe again and then adapt according to our observations. You know, I have many friends in the farming community. Their idea of farming is to get a recipe card from the agronomy center, have them apply what nutrients the agronomist says, come out and spray what chemical the agronomist says. They don't observe and they don't adapt. One of the hardest challenges we have as we take people down to help them on their regenerative journey is to teach them how to observe again. Our ancestors had that keen power of observation. We've lost that, right? We need to get away from yield per acre. Tell you a little story. So one year, the national champion corn grower, or maize grower, from the United States came to Bismarck. So, of course, I had to go listen to him. And I'm sitting there listening to him, and he's reeling off just slide after slide of all these inputs he put into this corn crop. And, you know, this maize was selling for about $3.50 a bushel, same price it's been for the last 40 years, unless there's a drought. And at the end of the program, he had a Q&A session. So I stood in line at the microphone, and I asked him this simple question. So, and I don't remember his exact yield. It was around 500 bushels an acre. And I stood up and I said, you know, one thing, you showed us your inputs, you showed us your yield. I want to know your profit. What did it cost you to produce a bushel of that corn? And he stood up there, and to his credit, he told us. He said, just over $7 a bushel. Me, having the big mouth I do, I said, I have no desire to learn how to lose money. And I turned and walked away, you know? But we are so focused on yield in the current production model, we sacrifice profit. I will take profit over yield any day. Because I tell you what, when you were as broke as I was, profit means something, you know? I can stay on the land with profit. I can't stay on the land with simply yield. We need to quit fighting nature. We need to learn how to mimic nature. We need to really start thinking about how do we grow more life on our operation. I tell people for years I used to wake up every morning trying to decide what I was going to kill that day. Was it going to be a weed, a pest, a fungal disease? I was going to kill something. Now I wake up every morning, how do I get more life on our farm? Let me tell you what, it's a lot more enjoyable and a lot more profitable working with life rather than death. Let me tell you just briefly what regenerative agriculture isn't. It is not prescriptive. You're not going to get a recipe card for regenerative agriculture, right? It isn't about synthetic inputs or the latest, greatest technologies. Now, I am not standing here to tell you you should drop all synthetic inputs and you should not look at the greatest technologies. There's a lot of technologies out at this event that are useful, okay? But just realize that's just something we can add on to enhance what we're doing. We first have to get back to mimicking nature. Regenerative agriculture isn't about yields, okay? It's about profit. It isn't about one size fits all. One of the principles of regenerative agriculture is that of context, and each one of our contexts is different. The other thing, regenerative agriculture isn't easy. It can be a rough road, but it's a very rewarding and profitable road. I like to define regenerative agriculture as this. It's farming in synchrony with nature to repair, rebuild, revitalize, and restore ecosystem function, beginning with all life in the soil, moving
Mark,
to all life above the soil.
Let's pause
And
at
that
this
life,
point.
Yeah.
Everybody, this is so cool. We have never interviewed Dan, and I hope we will, and I will work to get him to be one of our guests. But I just thought we'd let it play through to this point. We are getting close to the top of the hour here. Robert was not able to make it, I guess. We just never had him come in. I've been looking regularly over at attendees to see if he maybe has shown up, but no sign of him. Probably had some kind of an issue. You never know when you're in Africa versus wherever. It looks like a couple comments from people. This is Robert talking about, yeah, it's pretty cool. And you know that his farm's a lot bigger than 5,000 acres. What did he say at the start, Mark? I think he's 6,000, if not more.
Yeah, he's got a big
I
farm.
think he has more than even 10,000 total, but he's a great speaker. Goes all, as he said in the start, all over the world talking about it, and he hasn't even taken us through yet a lot of how it's improved, long-term production, short-term production, everything as it relates to his farm, his ranch. So anyway, we've never actually highlighted him before, so it was good to be able to do that today. We'll play the rest of that. So Mark, kind of remember where we stopped that, and we'll come back and play that another time, maybe even Thursday. Just
Right.
keep it current. And I think there's probably 10, 15 minutes left of it.
It's
Speaking
47 minutes total.
Yeah.
And we played about 21 minutes.
Okay. So we've still got a little over 20 some minutes before it'd be done. All right. Well, again, everybody, I apologize that we didn't have Robert come on today, but
Yeah, it's Ronald Wynn. It's Ronald.
Ronald. I keep
Yes.
saying Robert.
Robert, yeah.
Ronald. I actually did speak today with Paresh from India, and Paresh has been on with us a number of times here recently, and we're going to be helping train farmers in India with our program. So, and particularly the ones in the region he lives, where they farm a lot of bananas, a very tropical area. So, I think we got one more message here. I'm going to grab it. And it's just Robert saying thank you for playing it. Gabe's always, I've heard him speak a number of times, but we've just not featured him on here. So unless we have any other specific questions, comments, I think we'll say adieu for the day, and everybody take care of yourselves, enjoy the spring or fall wherever you are in the world, and